IGN finally played Skull and Bones. For those of you that weren't in here earlier, I missed out on this by like a few hours. I didn't get the beta invite, but then I emailed my contacts at Ubisoft, and by the time they responded, it had just ended a few hours before. So I didn't get the chance to play it. But the next playtest they do, I will be joining. In the meantime, we're going to see what this looks like. My background with this game, I've made a few videos on it. It's if you're not familiar with Skull and Bones, just to give you the quick deep dive, it is well known that the game is like been in development hell for a long time. This was greenlit after the success of Black Flag, which was in like 2013 and was received super well. Chat's catching up. It's not actually moving that fast for people in the VOD. So it's been in development hell for a decade, basically. It's been restarted multiple times. It can't make its mind up as to whether it wants to be Black Flag just with the sailing mechanics, or if it wants to also let you go and board ships, or if it wants to be like a pirate sim, or if it wants to be a sort of Sea of Thieves type game. It just has struggled with its identity, but it seems like they're actually approaching a finalized version of the game, and they're starting to let people play test it, stream it, and share their thoughts on it. And IGN got to try it and decided they were going to share their thoughts. So let's see what it is. I've not seen this yet. I did see some people streaming their gameplay on Twitch and stuff, and it looked pretty good. I mean, it looked fine, but let's see what they said.
It's no secret that Ubisoft's seafaring pirate game Skull and Bones, which was first revealed way back in 2017, has endured a troubled development. Originally conceived as an expansion to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, then an MMO spin-off, and finally an independent project that suffered numerous delays, it's understandable for players to be concerned about the upcoming action game where naval warfare and piracy are placed front and center. But after numerous hours sunk into the recent closed beta, I'm happy to report that I came away from the experience much more confident that we'll be getting a worthy successor to Black Flag's awesome buccaneering ways. With a much more interesting story than I was expecting, some really appetizing RPG systems in place, and smooth and entertaining naval combat, Skull and Bones is looking pretty darn fun as it prepares to finally set sail at long last.
Oh, come to loot my cabin, you filthy scrag!
Okay.
Following up on the success of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag from way back in 2013, Skull and Bones is an open-world tactical action game where you play as a pirate set loose on the high seas during the golden age of piracy and unfettered capitalism. After suffering defeat at
Unfettered capitalism. It's a weird thing to just throw in. I mean, the East India Trading Company, that like there's a whole lot of government intervention in all this. Like, it's kind of how the whole golden age of piracy started was because of government intervention with privateers and things. So I don't know. That was a weird thing to just throw in there. I don't know how that makes any sense. Anyway, my biggest concern with this is just, I don't know how Skull and Bones can overcome the negative perceptions surrounding it. You know, when you've had so much bad press for so long, how do you come out and win people over? You know, a game like No Man's Sky went from being super hyped and super pumped up. Everybody was in love with it. It was going to be amazing, best game ever. Then it released and people were like, oh, this is actually kind of terrible. And it swapped. But the interest, name recognition, all of that, there were still some generally positive feelings because people were like, oh, but the vision, if they could deliver on the vision, it would be amazing, you know? With this, I don't think the hype has ever been there. It's always been at the bottom, trickling towards the bottom of the graph. So I don't know how they go from pretty much exclusively negative press of this game's in development hell, this game is never going to release, this game is being made by a studio that doesn't know what they're doing, blah blah blah, how they go from that to being like, oh, I'll try it, I'll give them my money, because bear in mind this game apparently is releasing at like $70. $70 is steep. I do think there's a market for this type of game, but I think the people that would play this are the people playing like Sea of Thieves, and Sea of Thieves is on Game Pass. And so for a lot of people, there's no added cost of like $70 to play it. So I think this is going to be a tough sell pretty much no matter what.
At the hands of some water narcs and finding myself washed ashore, my journey of notoriety started from humble beginnings aboard a piece of glorified driftwood, all the way to a massive ship with enough cannons to fight off an army. The story placed me in the Indian Ocean, where I joined the crew of pirate legend John Spurlock and began running jobs in my pursuit of wealth and power. I'll admit that I expected very little from the story, but was pleasantly surprised by the memorable cast of characters and extensive dialogue in between action-packed stretches of robbery and oceanic misdeeds.
This is potentially the one thing that could help Skull and Bones, though, is that expectations are so freaking low that if they can just come along and like deliver a semi-competent experience, people are going to be very pleasantly surprised. You know, expect nothing and be surprised when there's something. And in this case, they might actually benefit from that. So who knows? Maybe this actually does work just because people are expecting it to be god awful. And when it releases and is pretty fine, like even pretty good, maybe if you like these kinds of games, that might really help them.
Must start taking matters into our own hands.
Much more interesting, though, were the shockingly deep RPG progression systems, which included survival game elements that had me collecting raw materials to build my ships, and an extensive loadout system, where I could customize every aspect of my vessel from function to cosmetics, including designating my very own lemur co-captain to the ship, which is obviously the most important part. Unlocking new schematics to build more powerful ships, different varieties of cannon, and other game-changing add-ons and accessories became an absolute obsession, and I poured all the silver and ill-gotten booty I could into turning my ship into the ultimate tool of destruction. There's a dizzying amount of unlockables.
What's my pirate name? Steven Skeptic Beard. I think I would just use my rapper name. My rapper name is based on my pigmentation. I usually go by Sour Cream. So I think I'd probably be like Captain Sour Cream. I think that, yeah, everybody would take me super seriously with that.
And configuration that goes into each vessel, and I could see myself easily losing many more hours optimizing my tools of the trade.
I saw your ship's got nothing sticking out of her gun ports.
Beyond that, I also spent a fair bit of time and silver on my pirate captain's appearance. And while the starting options during the beta weren't terribly extensive, years of playing Sea of Thieves has taught me the importance of striking fear into the hearts of my enemies by looking as intimidating as possible. Of course, the crown jewel of Skull and Bones is in its naval combat, and like Black Flag before it, this game seems to absolutely nail that element, even in this early beta phase. Because I had to place different weapons on different sides of my ship, mobility was key to winning the day, as I could fire from one end of the ship, then rotate to unload a different cannon while the first one was being reloaded by my crew. Watching a ship sink down to Davy Jones in a massive fiery explosion is a sight to behold, and jumping aboard a weakened enemy ship awarded some much appreciated extra loot. I also enjoyed just how brutally difficult my adventures on the high sea could be, with different areas locked at different—
Oh man, I love the storms. Again, talking about biases, let me be very clear. I am a sucker for the ocean. I'm a sucker for boats and sailing. And if I could live on the ocean, I probably would. There's something deep within me that loves the ocean. I just find it magical, which is a word which means I can't explain it. So therefore it makes me feel special. So I love the ocean, and there aren't actually a lot of games that let you explore the oceans, especially with like big scary storms and waves and stuff. Have you played Subnautica? You sure have. That's a great example. Yeah, that's a good one. I heard you can take a submersible to the Titanic. I also heard that. Maybe we'll have to try that.
Different difficulties, meaning a voyage too far into uncharted waters could leave me pursued by a ship far beyond my capabilities, or stuck in a thunderstorm that could spell my imminent demise. This formula was especially exciting when played among friends, and having up to 2 of my most trusted despoilers join me in a bit of piracy made for some wonderful added chaos. My favorite activity was plundering, where my friends and I attacked a settlement from the coastline, then held off waves of increasingly challenging enemy ships as we accumulated loot. I'm not surprised that Skull and Bones seems like it's going to pull off ship-to-ship combat so well given its Black Flag origins, but I'm definitely surprised that it seems like it might actually blow it out of the water with interesting activities and a much-needed co-op component. After a good chunk of climbing the ranks of notoriety in Skull and Bones' beta, I'm more excited to dive into the full experience than I was even way back when it was announced at E3 all those years ago. Here's hoping it'll make it safely to shore in the coming months. For more, check out our preview of Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden.
Honestly, it's pretty positive all told. I mean, I'll give them credit. Like, it seems like they at least won over the IGN guys. I am open to it. Like, the big question for me, though, is just how do you make this thing worth $70? That, to me, is the toughest sell, frankly. Maybe they can pull it off. Maybe. I haven't tried the game myself. I would love to be convinced. I would love for this to be one of those comeback stories where everybody thought this game was going to flop and then it actually ends up doing well. Of course, because I want more games to be successful and more games to play. Of course, I would love for it to be pulled off, but I just don't know how you go from development hell to being worth $70, you know?
M&H Crush super chatted $10.37. How did you like that original Black Flag? Good luck in your quest to be a new homeowner. Cheers from NF Canada.
Oh, thank you, my friend. The super chat definitely helps. Yeah, we should be signing an offer here, like, in just a little bit. I'm waiting for the DocuSign thing to come in. But yeah, I would say, like, the original Black Flag, for its time especially, was phenomenal. I think it's right up there for 2013 with, like, Shadow of Mordor for the best games of that year. It's just really, really good. However, like, it's aged. It still has tons of trailing missions. It has tons of weird artifacts from the time like that in terms of its design. But so much of the game, I think, is just tremendous. So, I mean, and even now, a decade later, we're still regularly talking about it. We're still saying, oh, man, I wish Ubisoft would go back and do that again. I wish they would do a Black Flag 2 or something, or a remake of it, which they happen to be doing. Or, you know, Skull and Bones, I hope that, you know, it's even half of what Black Flag offered. And I think that that's a real testament to it. I think that's a real testament to it. Luke, you are the only streamer covering this. Yeah, most likely. Again, it brings me back to my broader point, which I don't know how you go from development hell to this. And this is the bigger problem right here. This person from IGN played the game, put out their honest thoughts, which were that they thought the game was actually pretty fun. And they're getting crapped on in the like to dislike ratio. There's people disliking this because they don't want it to be successful. And maybe just maybe 1.6K people played the beta and strongly disagree and thought it was terrible. But let's be completely honest with ourselves. Most of these are just people that are trying to jump on the hate bandwagon to screw over the game. And I'm not saying that, like, the game's going to be good or anything, but this is what turns creators off from covering games or talking about them. You know, it's a mess. This is why they don't want to bother with it. Because, you pour your heart and soul into a video, you put it out there and you let your honest thoughts out. And then you get crapped on because you happen to have an opinion that's anathema. That's not allowed. He took my thing. Red flag, red